Roguelikes have always been kind of hard for me to figure out, you know? It's a genre that works because of the randomness and all the elements that make it a fresh experience every time you play a new session, but something about them really needs to click for me to actually enjoy them. So I thought it would be fun to talk about 5 indie roguelikes that I've actually been enjoying for a change, because like I said, the genre is kind of hard to get into, but once you find something that works, they really do click. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Dan, and welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk your ear off about video games. First up is a game that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and that's Moonlighter 2: The Endless Vault. It's the sequel to Moonlighter, if that wasn't already clear. And in the game, you play as a shopkeeper named Will, who explores different dungeons to take the loot from those dungeons and sell them in a shop. And you're going to use the money you make from your shop as well as the relics you find in these dungeons to upgrade your armor and upgrade your weapons. And this isn't something as simple as getting a better sword or better armor. You're getting armor and weapons that have different effects, which makes it a lot more interesting to customize different pairings. So as you move through each of these areas and you're collecting loot and you're fighting monsters, you're going to be organizing Will's backpack as you do these things. Now, this is actually very important, and in my opinion, one of the most fun parts of Moonlighter, and here's why. Some items are going to have effects on other items, and these effects can be positive, like increasing the rarity of a certain item, or very negative, such as destroying a certain item. It's essentially its own puzzle game within Moonlighter. You're going to go through each area, and at the end of the area, you're going to get all your items, and then sit down with yourself and be like, okay, what can I do to make my haul even more worthwhile? And you'll get to a point where your backpack is so full that you decide you just need to leave the area and escape before trying to fight the boss. And this is something I actually found really enjoyable about Moonlighter, because then I was deciding, do I want this next run to be a relic run where I'm just going to collect as much loot as possible, or do I want to make a run for the boss which has all of the best loot in every area? And you make this decision by choosing what area you're going to go to next on the map. So when you clear an area, you get to decide what node you want to move on to and what path that's going to bring you along. Some nodes are going to have boss fights on them, other ones are just going to have a good chest on them, while certain nodes are going to give you perks in combat, which will affect your abilities as you fight. And these perks are where it really gets roguelike-y, because now you're starting to build out what Will's combat is going to look like. Are you going to be applying burn? Are you going to be applying thunder stacks, which then result in a bolt of lightning that attacks all the enemies on the screen? So you're able to do a little bit of build crafting, which could make you more formidable to then go ahead and fight the boss and get the best loot in the area. But like I said, it might make a lot more sense just for you to grab all the loot you can and then get the heck out of there. And if you do happen to fall in battle on a run with a full backpack that has all of this great loot, it's not the worst thing in the world, because instead of losing all of the loot that you grabbed like you might in other games, you'll only lose half of the quality of the loot that you have. So you'll come back with stuff, it just won't be nearly as satisfying as it might have been if you just escaped before passing out. But if you want to try the game in early access right now on Steam, you can find a link in the description below. And in my opinion, this is a very flushed out early access, so do with that what you will. ScourgeBringer is a 2D hack and slash game where you're zipping around the map so fast that you might even be surprised that you did what you did in the time that you did it, because this game moves so quickly, but it also is very easy to follow once you get used to it. During each run, Kira's combat efficiency can improve through damage bonuses and perks that are found through each run, whether it be through combat or exploration. And it's for this reason that it's very important that you don't rush to the boss, because you never know what you're going to find at the end of a fight. But above all else, the movement in ScourgeBringer is what defines this game and makes it different from the other ones on this list. You're going to find yourself dashing between enemies really fast, reacting to their attacks, sometimes stunning them at the right moment, deflecting projectiles back at the enemies so you get more damage from that. There's so much happening on screen at once, but as you play this game, you're going to get more and more comfortable with that speed, and the ultimate result is that you'll feel really cool when you do it. But all of that hacking and slashing will mean almost nothing in ScourgeBringer if you don't start to learn the boss and enemy patterns as you play. Because I'll admit it, some of these fights feel really unfair until you realize that the game tells you exactly what you need to know. Certain enemies will have exclamation points over their heads right before they do a certain attack, and when you hit them during that moment, you're going to stun them, and then you can do a lot of damage to them while they're knocked out. And the same rule applies to bosses, so if you take your time and learn the patterns, you should be alright, but if you're not, this game does have a lot of different settings that allow you to change the difficulty so you can make it a little bit easier and accessible. One of my favorite options this game has is a feature called adaptive difficulty, which makes it easier for you if you're having a hard time on certain maps. The main effect that this feature has is that it'll make enemies less dense, so rooms won't be as packed and you'll have a chance to gather yourself and clear the room without getting laid out. But there are also permanent upgrades that you can unlock through a currency called Judge Blood, which is gained by defeating both mini bosses and area bosses as well. So when you eventually do lose on a run, you'll be sent back to the main area, and on a literal tree with upgrades on it, you can spend your Judge Blood to unlock some permanent upgrades that'll make things a little easier as you go. Now, some of these upgrades are passive effects, but one of my favorite ones is something called the Fury Attack, which it is on a cooldown, a very long one, but when it's used in combat, it's going to clear a room of all of its regular enemies. So ScourgeBringer does lean into its difficulty, but I did find it nice that there were a lot of accessibility options to make that difficulty a little more palatable. And if this sounded interesting to you, the game is available on Switch and on Steam. I think it's available basically everywhere, but you can find a Switch link and a Steam link in the description below. Absolum is an action-adventure beat-em-up with a lot of really interesting roguelike elements that makes the game really hard for me to stop playing. The game is set in a world where wizards have been labeled outcasts and are being blamed for a cataclysm which tore the world apart. But the person who's actually responsible for the cataclysm is somebody called the Sun King, who has gone ahead and blamed wizards for all the problems that he caused. So it's your job as a group of rebellious wizards to go and take that guy out. There are 4 playable characters in this game, but you only start off with 2 of them unlocked from the get-go, so you do have to play the story to get the other 2. But honestly, they're all really fun to play as, so it's a really good time to just dig into each of them and see which one you like the best. Not to mention that this game can also be enjoyed with online or local co-op, which is a great time. And honestly, that's my favorite way to play all beat-em-up games, which is co-op, so I'm really glad that this feature is included. Now, the combat in Absolum is very reminiscent of every beat-em-up you've ever played in the arcades or at home at this point. And in games like this, my first instinct is almost always to start mashing buttons and just hoping for victory, because honestly, that usually works. But in the case of Absolum, it's much better to exercise some patience during combat. So that means dodging, that means deflecting attacks, and ultimately just trying to avoid getting hit, looking for those openings, and then commencing the button mashing. Because when you start to juggle a boss in a certain combo, it almost feels like you're playing a fighting game, and the satisfaction is just very high. And as you clear areas, you're going to be given the choice between one of 3 different permanent perks that will ultimately affect how everything works for your character. A good example of this is unlocking a perk that adds a burn to every strike that you perform. And a strike is a regular hit, a special is your heavy attack, and then the special attack is called the Arcana, and that's also a thing you have to keep in mind. So let's say you accept that perk, and now your regular attack is also applying burn to enemies. Great, they're going to take more damage over time. Now down the road, there might be another perk that applies Gale to enemies after you use a special attack. So now that means they're going to be floating in the air, helpless if you hit them with Gale enough time. So now you're applying burn, and they're stuck in the air flying around. This is sort of how things work. So you'll want to start to put together these little fun builds in your head. As you go on, these perks start to play together, and the synergy is where it's at. And just like in every game on this list, as you lean into builds and learn how they work, you're gonna feel really, really powerful in Absolum. And obviously all of these games follow the same trend, but I do wanna call out Absolum's art direction, music, storytelling. I think it's the best one on the list for those things. This is a very cohesive experience, and while the challenge is the fun part, the story and the way the game's characters just look are fun. And the different paths you can take on each run are also really interesting because there's a lot to do in this game. It all feels very intentional, and every area is static on the map, so it all looks the same most of the time, but there are secret areas to be found. There are certain quests that you have to do, so repeating runs usually feels, I don't want to say monotonous in other roguelikes, but in this game it feels intentional, like you have to repeat runs in order to see everything this game has to offer, which I think is really powerful. But seeing all of the content in this game isn't just about seeing it, it's also about unlocking as many abilities as you can, because ultimately you do want to get as strong as possible to fight the Sun King, and to do that, you're going to need a lot of firepower, which honestly, me and my buddy Mark are still trying to figure out. We declared last night that we're at the get good stage of Absolum, so we have all the upgrades, we have all the unlocks, we just have to go on a good run and hopefully beat that boss. We'll get there. Shape of Dreams is a little more like what you would think when you talk about action roguelikes. It's a top-down action-adventure RPG where you have a character with very specific skills, and as you move between areas, you unlock different abilities, and this is what creates your build and also your experience in the game. And while that might sound simple and almost like every other generic action roguelike game, let me talk to you about why this game really should be on your radar. So the abilities that you find in Shape of Dreams are called memories. These could be heals, these could be attacks, these could be buffs. They make up your loadout. This means that you can lean into building as a support player for your team, which, by the way, this game does support co-op, which I think is great. Or you can focus on damage output and choose only memories that give you abilities to, shoot a fireball or do all sorts of damage. So you modify your basic loadout with what memories you have equipped, and you can find different memories along the way and swap those in if you want to change things up. But the really cool part of Shape of Dreams is the essences, or these little gemstones that you move between memories. And the way that those work is that they'll apply little modifications to whatever memory that is attached to. So if you have an attack, you'll have a gemstone that says gain 10 health for every 5 damage that this attack does. That would actually be way too overpowered, but you understand what's happening here. So you've got the essence, which modifies the memory, and you can take that essence and move it to a different attack and change it and do different things with it. And as you collect more and more essences, you're going to apply them to your different memories, change up your loadout, upgrade the essences, and eventually you'll find some crazy combination that makes you very overpowered. And then that is the point of Shape of Dreams, is to make a completely broken character, because the bosses and some of the enemies in this game are also very broken. So it's almost necessary for you to build into something ridiculous and become almost godlike in the game. And while it is essential for completing the game, it's also so much fun to see all these big numbers go up. And like I said before, the game is co-op, so that's a blast. And as you play the game, you're going to unlock different base characters, and they all have different abilities that sort of inform the kind of build you should be going for with those characters, but the choice is honestly yours. You can change out all their attacks, modify everything about these characters as you go through each area, and make up what you want to do, which I think is a lot of fun. The last time I played this game, I put together an attack that was doing 79,000 damage, and honestly, I didn't realize this was happening. I saw some cool synergy between the gold that I was getting and the amount of damage this attack did. I had a friend who was giving me gold with one of his abilities, so I was able to just gain money, use money for attack, and all of a sudden, I was just demolishing enemies. I don't know how, but it was so much fun to do, and these are the kind of things that you can do in Shape of Dreams. It is really important to read a lot of stuff in this game, but I had it working really well on my Steam Deck, and I had a great time with it, so give it a shot. Megabonk is a roguelike, but it's really a survivor type game. When you think of a game like Vampire Survivors, all you're really doing is running around a map and gaining abilities and laying waste to hordes of enemies. There's really not a lot of gameplay in a survivor-like, and that's usually why I avoid these games entirely. But the ones I do talk about are usually a lot more engaging than most other survivor-like games, and that's why we're talking about Megabonk right now. This game features, and you guessed it, a bunch of different characters that you can play as, all who have slightly different abilities between each of them. At the start, you're only going to have 2 available to you, but that's alright, because honestly, with the way this game works, the real fun happens when you start to unlock more and more things on each run. And since your character is doing all of the hard work, which is to say, attacking enemies that are closest to them, it's your job to find the boss portal, find as much loot as possible to modify your build, level up and choose upgrades which decide what your character's attacks are going to look like, and survive. Try to avoid groups of enemies when you can, but once you get strong enough, you might want to run into groups of enemies so you can collect all that sweet experience points and gold. Something about the situational awareness that was required when playing Megabonk made me come back for more, because I was enjoying having to think about exploration and finding other things on the map, because you have to find that boss portal. It's not immediately available to you. So while your character is taking out all these enemies around you, it's up to you to stay alive and find that portal. So as you unlock items and abilities on each run, as you gain levels and choose all of your different perks, you're gonna find that your character gets pretty powerful pretty quickly, and it's a lot of fun to watch. It's not long before you're just laying waste to droves of monsters in this game, and that's usually when you're about ready for that area's boss fight. And if you're strong enough and you clear the boss, then you'll usually move on to the next tier and then try your build in that area, which is slightly more difficult. and I have not yet done it. But it's a good thing that there's more to do than just clearing levels in this game. There's so many little objectives that not only give you silver to spend in the game shop, and you'll spend that to unlock characters, unlock different items that will then drop on future runs, and all these different things that are much more fun than just trying to beat the game, because eventually you'll hopefully get enough unlocks that do allow you to beat the game, and I've been enjoying it. It's a little simpler, it runs great on the Steam Deck, and it's not on Switch at this current moment anyway. There are so many fakes of Megabonk on the Switch. This game's on PC as far as I know. Steam, just keep that in mind when you go shopping for it. I want it to release on Switch. I think it'd be a great game for the Switch, but hasn't happened yet, so just letting you know, it's sort of a PSA. I kind of digressed a little bit there, but this game does work really well on handheld, so it's a lot of fun. It's really simple. It's kind of nice because each run can last, I think a long one is like 6 minutes long, so it just gives you an idea of how much you'll be repeating yourself in this game, which again goes back to why it's really good to have all these little things to do beyond just trying to clear each level. And that was just 5 of the roguelikes that I've been enjoying in recent history. One of them isn't really a roguelike, but Megabonk I feel deserves to be on this list because of how much I've been playing it. This is a deep genre. Hades and Hades 2 made this very popular, but it also makes a lot of sense. When you have a really good core gameplay loop, it's fun to add a little bit of randomization to keep things fresh and to make it a little more interesting as time goes on. So I do appreciate a good roguelike when I see one, and that's why we talked about these 5. And let me know in the comments if you decided to pick up any of these games, because I'm simply interested in learning about what games you guys gravitate towards. I just like to know what you're playing. It makes me curious. If you're playing a roguelike that isn't on this list, also drop that in the comments, because I love game recommendations. That's what we're doing here, and that goes both ways, so let me know what you're playing. Okay, so moving forward, we're gonna be talking a lot more about indie games, both on the Steam Deck and on the Switch and Switch 2. Here and there, we'll probably talk about some popular games, but there's gonna be a really good reason for that. So stick around if that's the kind of thing you're excited about. Make sure you subscribe. If you like this video, make sure you like the video. Thank you very much for watching this deep. It's been a little bit since my last upload. We'll probably get into why that is, maybe. Sort of, roughly. Just know that I'm back. I'm working on a new sort of schedule that's gonna help my production work. It's a one-man show over here, so, and I like it that way. You know, there are some projects that won't be just me, but this one's probably gonna be just me for a long time. So thank you for your patience. You don't know how much I appreciate it. Didn't mean to get a little sort of deep. My shoulder just exploded. I don't know if you heard that. Thank you for letting me talk your ear off about 5 action roguelikes that I think you're gonna get a kick out of, and I will see you in the next video.